Good morning. This is Bread from the Beach, and excited today about the opportunity to share with you some thoughts about the great Apostle Paul. These thoughts really come from the 9th chapter of the book of Acts and have to do with the conversion of Paul when he was on his way to Damascus to do what he really felt he was supposed to be doing, that he had been commissioned to persecute Christians, and really felt that because he was being obedient to the authorities above him, that he was doing God's work by doing this. But God had a different plan. So on his way to Damascus, the Lord basically arrested him by his own power and gave mercy in that moment to Saul of Tarsus, so that he could then become the great Apostle Paul. Now what happened there was he really had a confrontation with the living Lord. And in that confrontation, if you and I go and fight with God, we don't win. And in that confrontation, he found himself blinded for 3 days. But God wanted to work his plan in this man that was called Saul of Tarsus, so that he could become the great Apostle Paul. Now those who were with him led him from that encounter, since he was blind, and took him into Damascus, and for 3 days he remained as a blind man, while God then spoke to a man named Ananias there in Damascus, and told Ananias, he said, look, there's a man here called Saul of Tarsus. And of course Ananias knew the Saul of Tarsus by his reputation. And you can imagine being told by God that you're to go and lay hands on this man and tell him the plans that God has for him, and to tell him what he is going to suffer as he serves God. And so you would think Ananias said, there might be somebody else you want to send, but he agreed to go. So he went, he laid hands on the Apostle Paul, and here is the words in verse 11, chapter 9. Go to the house of Judas on the straight street, and ask for a man from Tarsus named Saul, for he is praying. In a vision he has seen a man named Ananias coming, and place his hands on him to restore his sight. Ananias then quibbled about this thing. Verse 15. Go, this man is my chosen instrument to proclaim my name to the Gentiles and their God and kings, and to the people of Israel, and I will show him how much he must suffer for my name. Now listen to the rest of this. When Ananias laid hands on him, immediately something like scales fell from Saul's eyes, and he could see again. He got up, he was baptized, and after taking some food, he regained his strength. Now, it's interesting, if you are Ananias and you've been told to lay hands on a man who is infamous because God has a purpose for him. I think sometimes in our journey, we're very quick to write off certain people. We look at them in the natural and we see that they aren't really good people or nice people, and sometimes very violent and what we would call evil people. But when God determines that he's going to use that person and he's going to lay his hand on them and call them, then we have to have faith in God's judgment, that God chose to call, God chose to equip, and God chose to send. And this is exactly what happened with this man named Saul of Tarsus. And he received what God's message was through the messenger Ananias. And Ananias didn't give him this flowery kind of thing, everything's going to be cool, just say yes to God. But he was told to tell him how much he was going to suffer for this mission that he was on. I wonder sometimes, a lot of people want to serve God, they want to jump into a ministry here, jump into ministry there. I wonder if they could see down the road really what it was going to cost. Would they say yes? Jesus is pretty clear. If you're going to follow him, we are to take up our cross and follow him. To lay down our own ambitions, our own rights to ourselves, and take up the cross and follow him. Because Paul said yes, he became that great Apostle Paul that we know, who has influenced millions and millions and millions of people through the New Testament. So here's what I want to leave with you. Be careful when you want to judge those that are around you and say God could never use them. God can use them. They just need to say yes. But there's always a price to pay when you're committed to serve him and committed to walk out the gospel message. So be open to the reality that you're going to get there. It's going to be an amazing journey. God's going to do amazing stuff. But the main thing in the journey is your relationship with Him and pressing into intimacy with Him. Then the cost, as you see it, will be well worth the price you pay. Because there is, at the end of this, all eternity in fellowship with the Father. This has been Bread from the Beach. Be blessed.